Hey, kia ora. Oh, excuse me. Whoa, that was a little tart. Hey, kia ora. Helen Brahms here, coming to you live from Surprise in Arizona. Hope you're having a super fantastic sparkling day. Welcome to Porchlight Letters podcast number 2237. Let's cross that one off. What was I going to say? Yeah, today this is really funny. I have a pen holder here, and my pens are laying in a pile. Anyway, what are we talking about? Oh, yes, we are starting volume 21 today, and volume 21? Yes, volume 21. Everyday Wonders is what we're going to be talking about this week. And tonight's episode is called Wonder in the Small Things. Yeah, the small things, just the little things. Oh, excuse me. I don't know what's going on. But anyway, so we're talking everyday wonders this week. We're going to try and keep it light and fun this week because, we've had some pretty serious stuff, although somehow I've happened to make it humorous. I don't know. But anyway, so yes, tonight we're going to talk about wonder in the small things. Sometimes life's biggest gifts arrive disguised as little things, a bird pausing on a wire, sunlight slipping through the curtains, or the sound of a child's giggle. I especially love baby giggles. Oh, I love baby giggles so much. Those moments might seem fleeting, but they hold the power to shift how we see the whole day. And if you think about it, when you're out, like when Zeph and I were out walking and stuff and the hummingbirds would come in, I would think it was Brad coming to say hi. But it was, and we actually have moth hummingbirds around here. So hummingbirds' bodies are usually about this big, but moth ones are about this big. They're about half the size of a regular hummingbird. They are absolutely very cute, very gorgeous. And it's just the little things. It's just like the wonder of how that little bird with its with its wings going so fast. It's like how, yeah. You got the blur next to them, that's their wings, and you can't see their wings, but they will go and sit on something. And I actually did my very first podcast that I ever did. It was on Blog Talk Radio. In fact, most of my some of my old podcasts are still there on Blog Talk Radio. It's still getting listened to this day, and I haven't posted on Blog Talk Radio in, I think it was 2000 and... I did them when I was down in San Diego, when we were in Rancho Bernardo. So I haven't posted a Blog Talk Radio since like about 2013, 2014, and they are still getting listened to today. I go back every now and again and have a look, and it just amazes me that, those podcasts, I started broadcasting on 2011 for about 3 or 4 years, once a week. And my very, very first podcast was about the hummingbird. And I don't know why. It was supposed to be on travel. And I just sat there and talked about the hummingbird for about 20 minutes, 30 minutes. But those podcasts are still getting listened to today, which just absolutely astounds me. That stuff's, what are we in now? We're in 2025, and I did those in 2011 through 2013 to 14, somewhere around there. Yeah, a long time before I actually did video podcasts. So, yeah, but back in the early days, the very first one in 2011 was on hummingbirds. I love hummingbirds. That was Brad's favorite bird. That's why I always associate hummingbirds with them. But and the owl. Sometimes when we go, depending on the time of night that we would go out there, we would see the owls out as well. And there's a couple of mornings where we'd go out for a walk where it was just as the dawn was breaking, just before the sun broke the horizon, and you would see the owl flying around. It's got this huge wingspan on it, and it would just soar through the air. It was magical to watch, absolutely magical. But there's all these little things around us that we should take notice, just take notice of, because they could bring you some joy in your life. In fact, one of the things I did when we were living in the campground for 30. I did myself a 30-day challenge, is as we walked around campground was to take photographs of unusual things, just stuff. One of my favorite ones I took a picture of was a rock that was painted like a ladybird, and it had this very sad look on its face. And I always used to, and I had it on a front of a card, and I had it blur. I had it in a blurry frame around it, so that you could just see this ladybird, and it was a get well card. Just the little thing. It was learning to notice the little things. And it was actually a very interesting exercise to do for 30 days, because I would take photographs, and my challenge was, and I'm not sure if I came up with this challenge or somebody challenged me, but for 30 days I had to post 5 to 10 photographs a day. So I did 5 in the evening and five in the morning and 5 in the evening when we went for our walks, of things that we saw around our local neighborhood. So it forced us to walk. There was only a certain area within the campground we could walk in, because there was a big part of the camping ground that we couldn't walk in because I had Zeffy with me. And if you had a pet, cat, dog, it didn't matter. If you had a pet, you had to stay in the pet section of the campground, and you were only allowed to walk your animals within that area. And but I managed to find, and it wasn't a big area either. But we would change our route and go up and down different little streets and stuff. And we found different things to take. And there was only like 10 rows of roads, I think it was. There was one that looped around, and then you cut across, and then there was just these cross ones that went across. I think was it 5 or 10 rows? But there wasn't a lot. So it was interesting what we could find. And sometimes I would take more photos on one day than the other day, but I'd only post whatever I had to post that day. And I would save up the others for the next day, type of thing. But it was interesting just seeing how people, especially those that had park models, how they did their little gardens and things. And some of them actually had live gardens, and some of them had artificial gardens where they had like sculptural gardens instead. It was pretty cool. It was awesome. So what it teaches, so when we see these fleeting moments, but they hold the power to shift how we see our whole day. When you start noticing things that surround you, it's amazing. It's actually quite amazing. I might go do that again. Maybe that should be a challenge I should give myself. Get me out of the house. So what it teaches us, that ordinary things can be extraordinary when we choose to notice them. Zeffy was great at this. She would live in the moment, see flowers, or just go sniff the flowers. And she knew she wasn't allowed on people's front yards. So she would try and go in the front yards, and I'm like, no. So wait till we got to the park, and then she'd go wandering into all the gravel areas where all the gardens were and sniff all the flowers. And then one time she tried to follow a rabbit into this big bush, and I went, no. It was just the little things. She would see bugs and she would sniff them and follow them. And she was just living in the moment. So ordinary things can be extraordinary when we choose to notice them. Wonder is not reserved for big events, but is found in the everyday. It could be, you might find a penny, find a coin laying on the ground. What do? Stop and pick it up? Why not? Paying attention slows us down and grounds us in the present. I tell you, Zeffy would do that with me every time I went for a walk, because especially after I took the headphones out. When I learned to take the headphones out and be present with her as we were doing the walks, it was amazing the things that you would notice. She would notice the smaller things first, because she would go over and sniff them, and she had this amazing curiosity. And it didn't matter if it was whatever it was, she wanted to go and check it out. I had to be careful around the dead critters that were laying around, especially in the park area over here. You'd go out some mornings and there'd be like a dead bird with all these feathers scattered around. I went, let's go over this way, Zeffy. And Zeffy's like, no, I want to go over here and check out the dead bird. It's like, no, because then you should want to eat it. I know, gross. I know. Paying attention slows us. Oh, that's right. Wonder reconnects us to curiosity, gratitude, and joy. When you start seeing those little things, give thanks for being present in the moment, and give thanks that you were present in the moment to be able to see those little things. What happens when you let a single small moment brighten your day? You pause to notice the details others may overlook. You allow simple things to remind you of life's goodness. You see how those small wonders ripple out into your mood, your choices, and your relationship. And I will tell you, sometimes the little things can be very inspiring. If you they could inspire. There's been times when we've gone out walking and stuff, and some little detail that I have seen, or some flit of a bird or something like that, has kind of inspired me to, or excuse me, I don't know what's going on tonight. would inspire me to go and write. And all it was just a simple, small thing because I was present. There's a piece of flash fiction that I wrote. It's about 300 words, 300 to 500 words. I can't remember I have the exact word count of it, but a piece of flash fiction is just a very, very short story. And I got inspired just by noticing a little thing. And the little thing is that we're walking along the road down to the dog park at one of the campgrounds, and it was in Florida when we were stuck in Orlando we were in lockdown in Orlando. And so we're walking down the road to the dog park areas as if you could have her off the leash time. And as I'm walking down, this movement caught the corner of my eye, and I turned, and there was a couple sitting on a bench at a picnic table. And it was the way that they were sitting that caught my attention, because he had walked up and sat down beside his wife, girlfriend, whoever she was, and just wrapped his arms around her. And it was just that little flit of movement of him sitting down at the table that caught my eye. And I went, and this story just started appearing in my head. Now, we were on our way to the dog park. I didn't have pen and paper with me. Lesson learned. Yes, I did have my phone, but I couldn't look at my phone while I was with Seffi, because she did not like me looking at my phone when we were at the dog park. If I was taking out to take a picture, that was okay. But if I was doing anything else on the phone, she would actually just come and stand and look at me like, no. But when we got back, and so on the way back, they were still sitting there in that same position. And, we were down at the dog park for like 40 minutes, I think it was. It wasn't an hour, but it was more than 30. So somewhere between 30 to 60 minutes we were down at the park. And then we walked back home to the RV, and I looked over there, and they were still sitting there just having this quiet moment. And but again, I got that burst of inspiration. So as soon as we got back to the RV, I sat down and wrote this piece of flash fiction. When I presented, we were doing Zoom calls for our writers group back in San Diego at the time. And so I read them this piece of flash fiction, and they were like, they turned around and said to me, because this group had gotten to know my writing and my writing style and everything else. And they all had the same comment, was that was the best piece of writing they had seen me do in the 2 to 3 years that I've been part of that group. They said, that is some of your best writing. They said, that's awesome. They go, now, is that part of a book? Is it just a piece by itself? Is it part of a bigger story? Is it a piece by itself? And I'm like, I don't know. And they're like, what do you mean you don't know? I says, it was just this piece that I was inspired by because of something that I saw, just a little movement out of the corner of my eye. I came up with this piece, and I don't know if it's going to be part of a bigger story or if I'm going to leave it by myself. Now, at that time, it was over 500 words. So one of the people in the group says, if you trim that down, you could actually have this piece as a piece of flash fiction. And I was like, oh, that's an idea. And so I worked on it. And so they gave me suggestions for, we always give each other editorial suggestions and things like that, whether it's on punctuation, grammar, whatever, spelling errors, that sort of stuff. And so everybody in the group, and I think there was like 4 or 5 of us online at the time, gave feedback and sent me their edited copies. And so I looked at their copies, and they'd explained why they suggested the changes that I make. And I ended up trimming it down to under 500 words. And it's still one of my favorite pieces that I've ever written. And I've shared it with a couple of people, and they really liked it as well. So it may end up in a bigger story later on, but by itself, it has a lot of impact. And my mum is still to this day probably trying to figure out what it's all about. I know what it's about. Well, yeah, trying to figure out what this thing that happened in the story is, because we don't actually say. But anyway, so how we carry it forward, we take time to pause and look for beauty in the ordinary. Carry a sense of childlike wonder wherever you go. This is one thing I love being out with when I'm out with my grandsons and stuff, or even just with the grandsons. It's the small things. It's the little things that they bring up or say, or that they see and talk about. And it's just if you've got kids around, look at the world through their eyes. like I was talking about, was it yesterday? Yesterday when I was talking about taking Darmic to the zoo in San Diego, and he would make a beeline for the flamingos every single time, and we would stand there for about an hour while he just watched these birds. And all they were doing was standing on one leg, they'd have their heads swiveled around and tucked into their feathers in the back, sleeping. So they were just basically these pink pom-poms made out of feathers, I guess you could say, standing on a stick. And he thought they were the most fascinating things. Occasionally one would put its other leg down and like wander around for a bit and find another spot to stick its leg back up and turn its head around and go back to sleep again. And then there were those that were sitting on top of nests as well, which was kind of fun. But yeah, look through the eyes of a child. It's amazing. Celebrate the simple as sacred. Let today's little wonders be enough. And when it comes to your legacy, when you notice the little things, you show others that wonder is always available. The smallest moments of awe can leave the biggest impressions on those who watch you live with joy. Okay, so now we have 4 reflection questions for you. Number 1, what small thing today caught your attention in a surprising way? Number 2, how can you slow down enough to notice more of those wonders in daily life? Number 3, what ordinary detail in your home or neighborhood brings you joy? And number 4, how can you invite more wonder into tomorrow? And our closing thought for the day, wonder doesn't need to be found. It's already here. In the sound of a laugh, the curve of a petal, the warmth of your favorite mug. The small things are the big things. And with that, we are out of here. Go out, have a super fantastic sparkling evening. Tomorrow evening, we're going to be on a little later, probably closer to 7 o'clock. So I'm going to put it at 7 o'clock because I have a call which is supposed to finish at 6, but I'm not sure if it will. So we're going to see you guys back here tomorrow evening at 7 p.m. Pacific time.